At my wife's last prenatal checkup, the doctor started shaking while looking at the ultrasound. He took me aside and said, "Leave this hospital now and file for divorce." I asked, "What do you mean?" He said, "There's no time to explain. You'll get it when you see this." After I saw what was on the screen, I never went back home. I spent my whole life building a perfect world, only to discover it was all a lie, a foundation built on deceit. But when that truth hit me, it ignited a cold fury, and I knew, sometimes, the only way to truly build something new is to completely demolish the old. Alright, so picture this. I'm Jared Atkinson, 38 years old. My hands? Calloused, a roadmap of every beam I'd lifted, every nail I'd hammered. I built my construction company from nothing, turned it into the most successful firm in Cedar Falls, with over 200 people working for me across 3 states. Precision, dedication, excellence. That was my motto, not just for houses, but for my whole damn life. 15 years ago, I married Angela Moody. She was the catch of Cedar Falls, blonde, ambitious, from one of those old money families where the money was long gone, but the name still carried weight. To outsiders, our marriage looked perfect. Angela played the part flawlessly, charity events, managing our big estate on Maple Ridge. But over the years, I started noticing things. A coldness in her touch. Hours disappearing without explanation. Expensive purchases that had no occasion. Our son, Trevor, he was 14 and the absolute light of my life. That kid, he had my work ethic and Angela's smarts, acing everything from sports to school. I coached his baseball team. We spent weekends out in the garage building stuff, a tradition Angela had stopped joining us for years ago. Then, 6 months ago, came the surprise. Angela was pregnant. After 14 years, after so many miscarriages, we thought Trevor would be our only one. I was ecstatic, over the moon. Angela? She was distant, anxious. Dr. Harrington, our family doctor for over a decade, a kind man, was monitoring her closely. But this pregnancy felt different from Trevor's. Angela then, she was glowing, excited. Now, she just seemed burdened, staring off, claiming hormonal anxiety. My best friend and business partner, Chuck Lake, he saw it too. Chuck handles the money side, I handle the builds. He'd mentioned seeing Angela at odd hours, always glued to her phone with this secretive smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Something's not right with her, man, he told me over our Friday beer just last week. Sarah saw her at the coffee shop, deep in conversation with some guy. When Sarah waved, Angela practically jumped out of her skin. I brushed it off then, tried to. But that seed of doubt, it was planted. Her behavior just got weirder. Coming home late from shopping with no bags. Whispering on the phone in private. Showing zero interest in getting ready for the baby. That morning, before our appointment, she was unusually quiet, barely touched breakfast, kept checking her reflection. When I suggested we grab lunch to celebrate our healthy baby, she just nodded, no enthusiasm at all. Now, sitting in that waiting room, waiting for her to come out, I couldn't shake this terrible, sinking feeling. I'd built my entire life, my whole success, on trusting my gut. And every single instinct was screaming at me that the perfectly constructed life I thought I had was about to come crashing down. Inside that small examination room, Angela felt a cold dread colder than the ultrasound gel on her belly. She'd been living a lie, and today, that tiny screen was going to expose everything. The affair with Marcos Jennings, that smooth-talking real estate developer, started 8 months ago. He was 32, charming, always in expensive suits, talking international investments, not building codes and job sites like me. Angela, she felt trapped here in Cedar Falls, always dreaming of a bigger, flashier life. Marcos had pursued her relentlessly, those expensive flowers arriving when I was at work, those poetic texts promising a world beyond our small town. He'd rented a luxury suite at the Grandview Hotel, 40 minutes away, where they'd meet twice a week. It was passionate, exciting, made her feel alive again. Then, the pregnancy. An accident. A moment of carelessness that just went too far. And by the time she realized, it was too late. The timeline, it was wrong. Dangerously wrong. She'd been with Marcos a full 3 weeks before she'd been intimate with me. Dr. Harrington, he moved that wand, his face growing more and more troubled. Angela couldn't see the screen, but she watched his face, saw his eyebrows furrow, his lips press into a thin line. "Is everything all right?" she managed, her voice barely a whisper. The doctor didn't answer right away. He was doing the math, comparing the baby's growth to the dates Angela had given. The measurements were off. Significantly off. This baby was conceived at least 3 weeks earlier than she'd claimed. 40 years in practice, and Dr. Harrington had seen this before. Nervous wives, trusting husbands, worlds about to shatter. But never with people he'd known for decades. And there I was, in the waiting room, completely oblivious, scrolling through emails. My company, Atkinson Construction, was in the middle of our biggest project yet, a luxury hotel complex. The irony of me building that kind of place, while my wife was betraying me in one, well, that's not lost on me now. Chuck had even texted about a potential investor, someone named Marcos Jennings, asking about my company. I just made a mental note, always looking to expand. My son, Trevor, he was at school, probably already dreaming about being a big brother, painting cartoon characters on the nursery walls, so excited. I smiled, thinking about him, completely unaware that his world, and mine, was about to be shattered. Dr. Harrington finally put down the wand, his eyes grave. "Mrs. Atkinson, we need to discuss the timeline of this pregnancy. Based on the baby's development, conception occurred approximately 26 weeks ago, not 23 as we originally calculated." Angela's face went white. 3 weeks. That's all it took to destroy 15 years. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. "I need to speak with your husband," Dr. Harrington said quietly. "This is a conversation that affects both of you, and he deserves to know the truth." As he left the room, Angela just closed her eyes, bracing for the end. Somewhere across town, Marcos Jennings was probably closing another deal, completely unaware he was about to blow up multiple lives. And I, the man who loved and trusted Angela for 15 years, was about to learn that my perfect life was a house built on lies. Dr. Harrington's hands were shaking as he walked towards me. I knew it. Something was wrong. His voice was too controlled when he asked to speak privately. We walked to his office, leaving Angela alone. He closed the door, gestured for me to sit, but he couldn't sit himself. He just paced. "Jared, what?" "I'm about to tell you will be difficult," he started, his gaze heavy. "The ultrasound shows the baby's development is inconsistent with the timeline Angela provided. Conception occurred approximately 26 weeks ago, not 23. I furrowed my brow, trying to grasp it. "What does that mean, exactly?" His next words hit me like a physical blow, a sledgehammer to the chest. "It means the child couldn't have been conceived when you and Angela were together. According to your wife's medical history and our previous discussions, you were away on that construction project in Denver during the conception window." Denver. The Denver project. 3 weeks in January. The biggest contract my company had ever landed. I'd called Angela every single night from there, missed her terribly, excited to come home and celebrate our success. My face drained of all color. "Are you absolutely certain?" I whispered. Dr. Harrington nodded gravely. "I've triple-checked. There's no doubt about the timing." I stood up slowly, my mind racing, replaying the last 6 months. Angela's strange behavior. The secret calls. The distance. It all snapped into perfect, horrifying focus. I thought about Trevor, sitting in algebra class right now, so excited to be a big brother to a child that wasn't even his sibling. What do I do now? I asked, not really to the doctor, but to myself, to the universe. "That's not for me to say," Dr. Harrington replied, his voice laced with genuine sympathy. "But Jared, you're a good man. You deserve better than this. Whatever you decide, you need to protect yourself and Trevor." As we walked back, his words echoed in my ears. "Leave this hospital now and file for divorce." They'd just come out, raw and honest. But I wasn't a man who made rash decisions. Not anymore. As we neared the door, I was already calculating, planning. Angela was still on the examination table, staring at the ceiling, tears in her eyes. She knew. She'd known all along. "Show me," I said to Dr. Harrington, my voice flat. "Show me the ultrasound." He hesitated, then turned the monitor. There it was. Undeniable proof. Measurements that screamed betrayal. The baby was healthy, growing normally. But it wasn't mine. Angela finally looked at me, her eyes desperate, tear-filled. "Jared, I can explain." "No," I said quietly, a coldness in my voice I'd never heard before. "You can't." I studied the ultrasound, burned every detail into my memory. Then I looked at her, the woman I'd loved, the mother of my son, the person who had just systematically destroyed everything I believed. "We're going home," I stated, eerily calm. "We're going to have a conversation, and then you're going to tell me exactly who he is." Her face went bone white. "Jared, please." "Dr. Harrington," I interrupted, turning to him. "Thank you for telling me the truth. Send me copies of everything. The ultrasound, the measurements, the timeline. Everything." We left that hospital. Angela tried to speak again and again, but I stayed silent. My mind wasn't on the betrayal itself anymore. I'd processed that shock. Now I was focused on the future. On Trevor's stability. On my business. And on the undeniable fact that somewhere in Cedar Falls, a man was walking around thinking he'd gotten away with destroying my family. I'd built an empire with careful planning and methodical execution. I knew that success wasn't just about working hard, it was about working smart. As we drove home, Angela sobbing softly beside me, I was already putting together a plan. A plan for justice that the legal system could never quite deliver. The man who'd spent 15 years building a life was about to spend however long it took tearing down the lives of those who'd betrayed him. And unlike my construction projects, this demolition would be personal, permanent, and absolutely devastating. That evening, my home office felt like a mausoleum. Awards for 15 years of success, photographs of family memories that now felt like elaborate, cruel lies. Angela had fled to our bedroom, feigning a headache. Trevor was upstairs, innocently doing homework, completely unaware his world was about to be obliterated. I opened my laptop. What I did next, I did best. Methodical research and planning. First search, Marcos Jennings. Didn't take long to unearth everything about Cedar Falls' newest predator. Jennings Development Group, sleek website, luxury properties. And Marcos, front and center, this charismatic CEO, all white teeth and expensive suits. Repulsive. The kind of guy who'd never lifted a finger for an honest day's work. His LinkedIn showed him at the same charity fundraiser where he'd probably charmed Angela. His social media? A shrine to attention and luxury. I dug deeper. Turns out, Marcos was married to Samantha Jennings, a big-shot attorney in the state capital. Twin 10-year-old daughters, million-dollar home. The irony clawed at me. This man wasn't just destroying my family, he was destroying his own, simultaneously. Over the next week, I played the part of the distracted husband. Told Chuck Angela was having pregnancy complications and needed rest. He, ever loyal, picked up the slack, no questions asked. Meanwhile, I was quietly gathering intelligence. I hired Paul Hines, a private investigator, ex-cop, specialized in infidelity. Discreet. Thorough. Exactly what I needed. Within 3 days, Paul delivered. Damning evidence. Angela and Marcos, weekly meetings at the Grand View Hotel. Photos. Timestamps. Calculated deception. She was using money from our joint account to pay for the room. Telling me she was shopping or visiting her sister Muriel, but really, she was 40 minutes away, playing house with a man as deceitful as she was. But I wanted more than just proof of the affair. I needed the full scope of their betrayal. I needed to make sure my response was comprehensive, permanent. Paul's investigation revealed Marcos was planning to leave his wife, move Angela to the state capital, start fresh with the baby, and use Angela's divorce settlement to fund their new life. It was a complete, gut-wrenching betrayal. She wasn't just unfaithful, she was planning to rip our family apart, take half of everything I'd built, and use it to fund her new life with another man's child. The depth of the deception was staggering. And Trevor, my son, still oblivious, still excitedly planning for his new sibling, working on the nursery. Watching his innocent enthusiasm was torture. But it also hardened my resolve. Trevor deserved better than a mother who could lie so thoroughly and a stepfather who was equally dishonest. Angela, meanwhile, was growing visibly nervous. She sensed my emotional distance, but somehow, she still thought she could keep up the charade. She even had the audacity to ask me about paint colors for the nursery. Playing the devoted wife while meeting Marcos twice a week. My respect for her evaporated completely. The woman I loved was a skilled manipulator, capable of looking me in the eyes and lying without a flicker. This side of her, it disgusted me more than the affair itself. That Friday evening, exactly 1 week after the ultrasound revelation, I made my decision. No confrontation yet. That would just make them more careful. Or worse, make them flee. Instead, I would execute a plan that would publicly expose their betrayal, ensuring they faced consequences far beyond a simple divorce settlement. As I sat there, reviewing Paul's latest report, I felt a familiar satisfaction. The kind I hadn't felt since building my first house. The satisfaction of a perfectly planned project about to come to fruition. Angela and Marcos had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated a man who had built an empire through patience, intelligence, and unwavering determination. They were about to learn that Jared Atkinson wasn't the simple small-town contractor they thought. I had resources. I had connections. And most importantly, I had a ruthless focus. I would ensure they regretted betraying me for the rest of their lives. The hunting season was officially open. And I had never, ever missed my target. 2 weeks after that gut punch of an ultrasound, I was ready. Every moment had been spent planning, meticulously, with the same precision I put into building skyscrapers. But this time, I wasn't creating. I was preparing to systematically dismantle the lives of the people who'd betrayed me. The key to my plan came from Paul Hines' investigation into Marcos's business. Jennings' development group was a house of cards, heavily leveraged, dependent on constant investor confidence. Worse, Marcos was a cheat. Cutting corners on environmental regulations, fudging safety standards, violations that could land him in prison if properly documented. My first move was strategic and, to them, completely innocent. I arranged a business meeting with Marcos, pretending to discuss a potential partnership. Atkinson Construction's reputation was golden. Any developer would jump at the chance to work with us. Marcos, arrogant as ever, eagerly agreed. We met at the Cedar Falls Country Club, a place where I held serious sway. He strutted in, expensive suit, clearly believing he was about to close a lucrative deal with some simple small-town contractor. Jared, I've heard incredible things about your company, Marcos gushed, extending a soft, uncalloused hand. I think we could do great things together. I shook his hand, feeling the stark contrast to my own working hands. Always interested in ambitious developers, I replied, masking my disgust. Tell me about your projects. Over lunch, he blabbered on, enthusiastically detailing his various developments. He inadvertently spilled all the beans about cost-cutting measures, regulatory shortcuts. He was so confident in his own cleverness that he practically confessed to a laundry list of violations right there. Sometimes you have to be creative with regulations, he said with a wink, like we were sharing some secret brotherhood of corruption. Environmental impact studies? Can be interpreted flexibly if you know the right people. I just nodded thoughtfully, my phone secretly recording every word. That's very interesting. I'd love to see some of your sites firsthand. We set up 3 site visits for the following week. What Marcos didn't know was I was documenting everything. Safety violations, environmental damage, building code breaches, even hints of bribery. Each visit, more ammunition. More nails for his coffin. Meanwhile, Angela's behavior grew more frantic. She'd skipped her last appointment with Dr. Harrington, claiming sickness, but I knew she was panicking about that timeline. She was even researching ways to explain it, even considered claiming the baby was premature, but the ultrasound measurements made that impossible. Her affair with Marcos continued, but their clandestine meetings were now clearly fueled by anxiety, not passion. She sensed something was off with me, but couldn't pinpoint it. Marcos, of course, dismissed her concerns, utterly confident his charm and my trusting nature would protect them. During this time, I was also locking down my assets. My attorney, Jeffrey Dunn, an old friend who'd helped me build this empire, asked no questions when I requested aggressive asset protection strategies. Jared, if you're concerned about liability, Jeffrey offered, we can create a more complex corporate structure. Do it, I told him, my voice firm. I want everything protected. The house, the business, Trevor's college fund. Everything. Trevor remained the one bright spot in my increasingly dark world. Still working on the nursery, painting cartoon characters with the same painstaking detail he applied to everything else. Watching his innocent excitement was heartbreaking, but it fueled my determination. Trevor deserved protection from the chaos I was about to unleash. Then, Thursday evening, Paul Hines delivered the final, crushing piece of evidence. Through surveillance and information gathering, he discovered Marcos was planning to leave his wife, Samantha, within the month. The plan was for Angela to file for divorce immediately after, claiming irreconcilable differences, then move to the state capital with the baby once it was born. They've got it all figured out, Paul reported. Marcos has already put a deposit on a penthouse. Angela's been researching divorce attorneys specializing in high-asset cases. They think they're going to walk away with half of everything you built. I just smiled, a cold, hard smile, as I looked at the surveillance photos of Angela and Marcos at the Grand View. They're about to learn, I said, that some plans don't survive contact with reality. That night, as Angela slept beside me, completely unaware, I finalized my strategy. I would reveal everything in a way that maximized damage to both of them, while completely protecting myself and Trevor. Timing was everything. Every moving part had to be coordinated perfectly. Phase 1, Intelligence Gathering. Phase 2, Evidence Collection and Asset Protection. Phase 3, starting Monday, was Total War. And Jared Atkinson had never, ever lost a war he chose to fight. Monday morning dawned with this weird, unseasonable warmth, almost like the universe itself was signaling it was the perfect day for absolute destruction. I woke before dawn, just like every day for the last 3 weeks, but today felt different. Today, the planning stopped. The execution began. At 7 a.m. sharp, I made my first call. State Environmental Protection Agency. I reported every violation I'd documented at Marcos's construction sites. I had everything. Photos, recorded conversations, irrefutable proof of illegal dumping, safety hazards, risks to workers and the public. My second call, the IRS. Marcos had boasted about tax strategies that screamed fraud, and I had meticulously documented every detail. The IRS takes that seriously, especially with solid evidence. Then, the third call. To Samantha Jennings, Marcos's unsuspecting wife. I debated this, but ultimately, she deserved to know the truth about her husband's double life. Mrs. Jennings, I said, my voice steady, my name is Jared Atkinson. I have information about your husband you need to know. Could we meet for coffee this morning? Her voice was cautious, but curiosity edged through. I'm not sure what this is about, Mr. Atkinson. Your husband is having an affair with my wife, I stated, no sugarcoating it. And they're planning to leave their families. I have extensive documentation, and I thought you should see it before making any decisions about your future. The silence on her end stretched for almost 30 seconds. Then, what kind of documentation? We met at a coffee shop near her law office. I laid out everything, surveillance photos, hotel receipts, text messages Paul had dug up, and yes, the ultrasound proving Angela was carrying Marcos's child. Samantha Jennings was formidable. Intelligent, composed, devastated, but fiercely professional. As a family law attorney, she grasped the implications instantly. This is comprehensive, she said, looking through the stack. You've essentially built an airtight case against both of them. That was the intention, I replied. Your husband plans to leave you for my wife. They think they'll take half of everything I've built to fund their new life. Samantha's eyes hardened. Not if I file first. She revealed she'd been documenting his suspicious behavior for months too. Combined with my evidence, they had nothing. We spent the next hour coordinating. Samantha would file for divorce that afternoon, seeking full custody of her daughters and a forensic accounting of all Marcos's business dealings. Her connections would ensure the process was swift and aggressive. Meanwhile, Angela was at Dr. Harrington's office for her rescheduled appointment. She couldn't avoid it any longer. She sat there, nervously, completely unaware her carefully constructed world was already in free fall. At noon, I returned home. Angela was in the kitchen, preparing lunch, a forced, nervous energy about her. She looked up, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How was your morning?" she asked, her voice artificially bright. "Productive," I replied, setting my briefcase on the counter. "We need to talk." The smile vanished. She froze. She dreaded this, hoped she could maintain the charade until the baby was born, then execute her escape with Marcos. "What about?" she asked, though I knew she already knew. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a manila folder. I spread its contents across the kitchen table: surveillance photos, hotel receipts, ultrasound images, undeniable proof of her affair. Her face went white as she stared at the photographs of herself and Marcos at the grand view. "Jared, I can explain." "No," I said quietly. "You can't. Because there is no explanation that justifies what you've done to our family." I sat down across from her, my voice eerily calm, controlled. "I know about Marcos Jennings. I know about your weekly meetings at the Grand View. I know that the baby you're carrying is his, not mine. And I know about your plan to divorce me and move to the state capital with my money." She started crying, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. The woman across from me was a stranger who had systematically destroyed 15 years of marriage and trust. "I also know," I continued, "that you've been planning this for months. Those hotel receipts go back to January, when I was in Denver, closing the biggest deal of my career. While I was working 18-hour days to secure our future, you were planning to destroy it." "Jared, please," she sobbed. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," I replied. "But here's what you don't know. As of this morning, Marcos Jennings is facing federal environmental violation charges, an IRS fraud investigation, and a divorce filing from his wife, who now has all the evidence of his affair. His business will be destroyed, his assets frozen, and his reputation ruined." Her crying stopped instantly. The implications hit her like a lightning bolt. "What did you do?" "I protected my family," I said, "and ensured that the people who betrayed us faced appropriate consequences. Marcos won't be taking care of you or your baby. He'll be lucky if he's not in federal prison." As if on cue, her phone buzzed. A text from Marcos: "Emergency. Need to talk immediately. Everything's falling apart." I watched her read it, saw the exact moment she realized her carefully planned escape had been utterly obliterated. The man she betrayed her family for was now a liability, not a salvation. "Pack your things," I said, standing up. "You have until Trevor gets home from school to leave this house. After that, all communication goes through attorneys." She looked up, desperate eyes pleading. "What about the baby? What about our family?" "This isn't our family anymore," I replied. "And that isn't my child. You made your choices, Angela. Now you get to live with the consequences." As I walked towards my office to make another round of calls, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. The planning was over. The truth was revealed. Justice was being served. Phase 3 had begun, and it was proceeding exactly as designed. Within 24 hours of my revelation, Angela and Marcos's meticulously built web of lies crumbled. It was like watching a house of cards collapse in a hurricane. The speed, the sheer completeness of it, exceeded even my expectations. It just proved what I always suspected: dishonest people rarely limit their deception to just one area of their lives. Marcos Jennings took the first hit Tuesday morning. Federal agents swarmed his office with search warrants for the environmental violations I'd reported. They seized everything: computers, files, financial records going back years. By noon, the story was front-page news in the state capital's business journal: "Developer faces federal environmental charges." The second blow landed that afternoon. Samantha Jennings, Marcos's wife, filed for divorce. She also filed for an emergency asset freeze, citing marital infidelity and financial irregularities. Her filing included all my surveillance evidence, plus even more documentation she'd gathered independently. It painted a picture of a man who'd systematically deceived everyone. Angela, meanwhile, had spent Monday night holed up in a hotel, desperately calling Marcos, watching her perfect little plan disintegrate. When she finally reached him Tuesday evening, the man who'd promised her luxury and sophistication was a complete mess. "Everything's ruined," Marcos croaked, his usual confidence gone. "The Fed seized everything. Samantha's frozen all our accounts. My investors are backing out. I don't know how this happened so fast." "Jared happened," Angela replied, bitter. "He knew everything. He's been planning this for weeks." "What do you mean he knew everything?" As Angela explained the ultrasound revelation and my methodical investigation, Marcos finally understood the trap. The simple contractor he'd dismissed as an easy mark had orchestrated their downfall with a precision that would have impressed a general. "We need to figure this out," he said, but his voice lacked any conviction. "There is no we anymore, Marcos," Angela cut him off. "You're about to lose everything, and I'm pregnant with your child." "How exactly are you going to take care of us now?" The conversation ended with him hanging up, leaving Angela alone in that hotel room, surrounded by the wreckage of her choices. The man she'd betrayed her family for? He'd revealed himself to be everything I was, but in reverse. Where I was reliable, he was weak. Where I was principled, he was selfish. Where I fought for my family, he abandoned his responsibilities at the first sign of trouble. Wednesday brought more devastation for both of them. The IRS announced a full audit of Jennings Development Group, with potential criminal charges looming. 3 major investors pulled out of Marcos's projects, citing reputational concerns. His business lawyer informed him the company would likely be in bankruptcy within 60 days. For Angela, the reality was setting in. Her sister Muriel, disgusted by the betrayal, refused to let her stay. Her parents, the once proud Moody family, were mortified, offering only cold disapproval, no support. And Chuck Lake? My best friend proved his loyalty by ensuring the word of Angela's affair spread through Cedar Falls' tight-knit business community with surgical precision. By Wednesday evening, everyone who mattered knew exactly what happened and where the blame lay. Public opinion? Overwhelmingly on my side, and utterly contemptuous of Angela's betrayal. Trevor, my amazing son, handled the news with remarkable resilience. I could see the pain in his eyes, though. "Is Mom ever coming home?" he asked Wednesday night as we worked on a new project in the garage, building a bookshelf for his room, replacing the nursery decorations he'd removed himself. "No," I replied honestly. "But we're going to be fine. We've always been a good team, and that's not going to change." "I'm sorry about the baby," Trevor said quietly. I was really excited about being a big brother. I put down my tools and just looked at him, the one genuine, valuable thing that came from my marriage. "You're going to be a great big brother someday, when the time is right," I told him. "This isn't about you, Trevor. You did nothing wrong." Thursday brought the final domino. Paul Hines delivered the proof. Marcos had been embezzling from his own company to fund his affair with Angela. The expensive hotel suite, the gifts, even Angela's shopping sprees, all paid for with stolen money. That embezzlement evidence was the final nail in Marcos's professional coffin. Within hours of it hitting federal investigators, warrants were issued. He was picked up Thursday evening, right at his office, led away in handcuffs as local news cameras captured every humiliating moment. Angela watched his arrest on the local news from her hotel room, her hand resting on her growing belly. She finally grasped the full scope of what her choices had wrought. The man she'd betrayed her family for wasn't just unfaithful and weak. He was a criminal, and she an unwitting accomplice in his schemes. Friday evening, exactly 1 week after I'd confronted Angela, I sat in my office, reviewing the results. Marcos Jennings was in federal custody, facing charges that would likely mean a decade in prison. His business, bankrupt. His assets, seized. His reputation, destroyed beyond repair. Angela was alone, pregnant, facing a divorce settlement that would leave her with almost nothing, thanks to a prenuptial agreement she'd conveniently forgotten about, and an adultery clause that voided most of her financial protections. Her family had disowned her. Her friends had abandoned her. The man she betrayed her family for was headed to prison. As I closed the files on my desk, I felt a deep, profound satisfaction. The planning had been meticulous. The execution flawless. The results comprehensive. The people who betrayed me were facing consequences proportionate to their actions. And Trevor and I? We were finally free to rebuild our lives on a foundation of truth, not lies. Phase 3 was complete. It was time to begin Phase 4. Building something better from the ashes of what had been destroyed. 3 months flew by since that ultrasound shattered my world. Cedar Falls had settled into a strange new normal, a testament to choices made and justice served. Winter came early that year, a blanket of snow that felt like it was cleansing the very air of the scandal that had consumed our town. Marcos Jennings? He was serving a 7-year federal sentence for embezzlement and environmental crimes. The prosecution had been swift, merciless, my evidence forming the backbone of a case that left no room for plea bargaining. The man who once strutted in expensive suits now wore prison orange, aged a decade in just 3 months. His twin daughters were with their mother, Samantha, who'd successfully claimed most of his remaining assets and wisely moved them to a new state, far from his toxic legacy. Angela gave birth to a daughter in December, a beautiful baby girl she named Cora. The birth was hard, physically and emotionally. She faced motherhood alone in a tiny apartment, relying on welfare and the minimal alimony the court awarded her, given her adultery. The once proud mayor's daughter, who dreamed of luxury, was now working part-time at a grocery store, struggling to make ends meet, raising an infant whose father would be in prison until she was school-aged. The cruel irony of it wasn't lost on anyone. Her family started speaking to her again, but those relationships were strained, conditional. The Moody name, once prestigious, was now linked to scandal and bad judgment. Me? I thrived in ways that even surprised me. The divorce was finalized in January, Angela receiving far less than she expected, thanks to our prenup and the undeniable evidence of her infidelity. Atkinson Construction, surprisingly, landed 2 major contracts right after the scandal. Clients appreciated my integrity, the way I handled my personal crisis with dignity and strength. Trevor, my amazing son, adjusted with remarkable resilience. He was angry at his mother at first, of course. But I worked carefully with him, helping him process the betrayal without letting it poison his view of all relationships. We grew even closer. Evenings spent working on projects, weekends hiking trails around Cedar Falls. Dad, Trevor asked one Saturday morning, as we rebuilt the deck behind our house, "Do you think you'll ever get married again?" I paused my hammering, really thought about it. At 40, I felt older, wiser, but not bitter. The betrayal had taught me careful judgment, but it hadn't destroyed my capacity for trust. It just made me incredibly selective about who earned it. Maybe someday, I replied honestly. But not until you and I have finished building our new life together. We're a pretty good team as we are. Chuck Lake became an even closer friend through all of this. His unwavering loyalty during my darkest period cemented a bond that went far beyond business. His wife, Sarah, took on this wonderful, protective role with Trevor, making sure he felt supported by our whole community even when his own family was shattered. The reconstruction of my personal life mirrored my construction projects, methodical, patient, built to last. I joined the school board, advocated for programs supporting children from broken homes. I even started a scholarship fund in Trevor's name, helping local students afford trade school or college. Dr. Harrington retired in December, but stayed in Cedar Falls. We'd occasionally grab coffee, and our conversations would always circle back to the ethics of truth-telling and how honesty, though painful, ultimately leads to justice. "You did the right thing," the old doctor told me once. It took courage, but it would have been worse for everyone if I'd stayed silent. Including Angela, I remember replying. Living a lie was destroying her, even if she couldn't see it. The truth gave her a chance to face reality, and maybe, just maybe, become a better person. By spring, Angela did show signs of growth, though it came at a tremendous cost. She worked hard, cared devotedly for Cora, and started counseling to understand her destructive choices. We'd occasionally see each other in town. Cedar Falls is too small to completely avoid it, but our interactions were brief, polite. The anger had faded, replaced by something closer to pity on my part and regret on hers. We'd both moved beyond the hatred and hurt to a place where we could coexist peacefully, living entirely separate lives. Trevor eventually asked to meet his half-sister. After careful consideration, I arranged supervised visits. He was curious about Cora, but firm about Angela's choices having permanent consequences on their relationship. He was polite, but distant during visits, fiercely protective of his loyalty to me, while maintaining basic human decency toward his mother. As spring turned to summer, I reflected on the year that had changed everything. The betrayal felt like the end of my world initially. But it was actually the end of a lie, one that had been slowly poisoning my life for years. The truth was devastating, yes, but ultimately liberating. It allowed me to build something truly authentic, something lasting. Standing on my rebuilt deck one evening, watching Trevor practice baseball in the backyard, I felt a contentment I hadn't experienced in years. A complete peace with my life as it actually was, not as I'd imagined it to be. The foundation was solid now, built on truth, integrity, and the unbreakable bond between a father and son who'd survived the worst and emerged stronger. 2 years later, Cedar Falls had fully absorbed the lessons of the Angela Atkinson scandal. The town moved on, carrying the collective wisdom that comes from witnessing justice served, completely and fairly. My story became something of a local legend, a cautionary tale about betrayal and the quiet, powerful rewards of integrity. Marcos Jennings? Still in federal prison, with 5 years left on his sentence. His ex-wife Samantha said he'd become a model prisoner, finally facing the reality of his actions. His daughters were thriving miles away, building new lives free from his toxic legacy. Angela continued her slow, difficult journey toward redemption. She was promoted to assistant manager at the grocery store, a modest achievement, but for her, genuine progress. Cora, her beautiful daughter, was a constant source of joy in Angela's otherwise challenging existence. Trevor's relationship with Angela remained civil, but distant. Now 16 and incredibly mature, he'd visit his mother occasionally, but his primary loyalty was fiercely with me. He'd grown into a young man embodying my best qualities, integrity, a strong work ethic, and unwavering loyalty. He navigated the trauma with grace, avoiding the bitterness that could have consumed someone his age. She made her choices, Trevor told me one evening, as we discussed Angela's community college business program graduation. I can respect that she's trying to do better without forgetting what she put us through. We went to the graduation, sat in the back, and left immediately. Angela saw us, nodded across the auditorium. She understood. Our presence was a form of closure, not reconciliation. She was grateful for our witness to her small achievement, knowing the damage to our relationship could never truly be repaired. I had found love again, but approached it with the careful deliberation that now defined all my major decisions. Pearl Downing was a kind, intelligent widow who had moved to Cedar Falls to be closer to her adult children. We took it slow, 18 months of genuinely getting to know each other, understanding the importance of building something real. Trevor approved of Pearl. He appreciated her respect for his relationship with me, and her clear understanding that she wasn't trying to replace his mother, but to add something positive to our lives. The three of us formed a comfortable, loving family unit, honoring the past while building a future. Atkinson Construction had exploded. We expanded into 3 states, employed over 400 people. Our reputation for integrity became our greatest asset. Clients sought us out specifically because of my character. The scandal that could have destroyed me had, instead, become living proof of my principles. Chuck Lake became a full partner, our friendship deepened by the fires we'd walked through together. His wife Sarah and Pearl grew close, creating a supportive social circle that respected everyone's needs. Dr. Harrington, though retired, remained a respected figure in Cedar Falls, often cited as a testament to professional integrity, a man who chose truth over comfort. Paul Hines, my private investigator, even became a local celebrity, the go-to guy for sensitive family matters. On a warm Saturday evening in June, exactly 3 years after that ultrasound revelation, I stood on my deck, the same deck I'd rebuilt during the darkest period of my life. I was surrounded by the people who'd proven their loyalty and worth, Chuck and Sarah with their kids, Pearl helping Trevor prepare for his senior year, Jeffrey Dunn and his family. Our annual barbecue had become a celebration of survival, of renewal. As I watched them, these genuine relationships built on truth and mutual respect, I reflected on the journey. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had ultimately saved me from a life built on lies. The pain, which felt unbearable then, had led to growth and wisdom I wouldn't have gained any other way. Any regrets? Pearl asked, joining me at the railing as the sun set over Cedar Falls. I considered it seriously, as I did everything about the last 3 years. About trusting too much initially? No. About how I handled the truth when I learned it? No. About the consequences that followed? No. I looked across the yard, where Trevor was patiently showing Chuck's youngest son how to swing a baseball bat, just like my own father had taught me decades ago. The cycle of positive influence continued unbroken. The only regret I have, I said, is that it took a crisis to show me the difference between the life I thought I wanted and the life I actually needed. But even that, I concluded with a soft smile, wasn't really a mistake. It was an education. As the evening wound down, as our friends departed, I felt a deep, profound satisfaction. The kind that comes from surviving the worst and building something better from the wreckage. Angela and Marcos had paid the full price for their betrayal, not through my revenge, but through the natural consequences of their choices and the justice that follows when truth replaces lies. The foundation was solid now, built on bedrock, not sand. Whatever the future held, I knew I was ready for it. I was surrounded by people whose love was genuine, whose loyalty had been tested and proven. Justice had been served, not through hatred or bitterness, but through the simple act of refusing to live a lie and insisting that actions have consequences. In Cedar Falls, my story became more than a local legend. It was proof that integrity, patience, and careful judgment could triumph over deception, betrayal, and selfishness. The man who'd lost everything had gained something far more valuable, a life built on truth, surrounded by people worthy of trust, anchored by the unshakable knowledge that he'd faced the worst and emerged victorious. The ultrasound that had revealed the lie had ultimately delivered the truth that set everyone free. And in the end, that truth had been worth every moment of pain it had caused to uncover.